In 2013, Apple pulled a move barely anyone ever expected, and that was making a budget phone. Quotes on budget, though. This was the iPhone 5C, a colorful plastic built iPhone, part of the 5 series. On paper, it sounded like the phone that would bring millions of new people into Apple's ecosystem. Instead, it became the worst iPhone of all time, and it's not even close. Now, to understand this disaster of a phone, we first have to understand a simple thing. Apple had never really believed in budget phones. From the very original in 2007 to the iPhone 5, Apple's strategy was simple: build one premium phone, charge premium prices, and let competitors fight over the cheaper end of the market. This worked surprisingly well. While companies like Samsung, HTC, Nokia, and LG were selling phones across every price range imaginable, Apple focused on a handful of expensive models and still made enormous profits. But by 2013, the market had changed a lot. Android manufacturers were growing rapidly, especially in developing markets where most people couldn't pay flagship iPhone prices. It was during this that Apple finally revealed the iPhone 5C. Then people saw the price. The budget iPhone started at $549 unlocked in the US. Sure, it was cheaper than the new iPhone 5S, but calling it affordable felt very generous. Many people actually expected Apple to finally compete with mid range Androids. Instead, they released a phone that was still expensive by almost everyone's standards. That was the very first problem. The second was actually even stronger. The 5C wasn't actually a brand new phone. Internally, it was very close to the previous year's iPhone 5. It used the same A6 processor, the same 4-inch Retina display, the same camera system. In many ways, Apple had taken last year's flagship, wrapped it in a colorful plastic, and called it a new product. Now, that's not necessarily a bad idea. Apple still to this day reuses hardware all the time, and those phones even sell well. The problem was perception. Apple had spent years convincing customers that iPhone meant an aluminum and glass sandwich. Then suddenly the new iPhone came in cheap looking plastic. Apple described it as unapologetic. The internet mostly described it differently. To many buyers, it looked simply just cheap. Ironically, that's exactly what some people wanted: a cheaper iPhone. Just not the one that looked cheap while still carrying a premium price. Meanwhile, standing next to it in Apple stores was the 5S. Touch ID, a faster A7 64-bit processor, a better camera. For many customers, spending a little extra was the smarter move all the way. The 5S became the phone people wanted, the 5C became what they settled it for. That created an awkward identity crisis. It wasn't the flagship, but it also wasn't the budget. It wasn't exciting enough for enthusiasts, and it wasn't cheap enough for price conscious buyers. It landed somewhere weirdly in the middle. Unfortunately for Apple, the middle isn't always the safest place to be. Sales weren't disastrous at all. This is an important distinction. The 5C still sold well. Most smartphone companies would have celebrated those numbers. The issue was that Apple had created expectations that the phone never met. Reports after launch suggested demand for the 5S significantly outpaced the 5C. Apple even reportedly reduced 5C production within months because sales weren't matching forecasts. That only strengthened the public perception that the phone had flopped. Whether it failed truly or not depends on how you see it. Commercially, it still sold well. Compared to Apple's expectation and public reception, it's definitely the worst iPhone they'd ever made. And then there was another problem too: timing. For years, Apple had already been selling older iPhones at lower prices. Someone looking to save money could simply buy last year's premium iPhone. So why choose a colorful plastic version that didn't feel much cheaper? The answer for many people was they didn't. The older premium model often looked like the better deal. Apple seemed to learn from this surprisingly quick. 1 year later, the company quietly dropped the C branding altogether. There was no iPhone C ever again, making it the only iPhone to never ever receive a single successor. The colorful plastic experiment ended almost as quickly as it began. But yes, Apple learned an important lesson. Instead of creating a cheaper looking iPhone altogether, it's better to take an older premium design, giving it modern internals, and marketing it as a compact, affordable option. And that was the birth of the iPhone SE. Looking back today, the 5C almost feels like an experiment Apple needed to make. It tested how far the Apple brand could stretch. It challenged the company's own design philosophy, and although it wasn't the financial disaster many people remember, it exposed a difficult truth. Lowering the price isn't enough. People also care about the compromises with that lower price. If you liked the story about the older iPhone fail, we would also like a more recent one of the iPhone mini. Click on the screen to watch it. And yes, please don't forget to like, subscribe,